Remember me? Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and I love to talk about books. And yes, wow, I am just as surprised as you are that you're watching this, because I can't believe I've still got subscribers left. So thank you for sticking with me while I had to take a break from Booktube. And today I'm going to use the opportunity to catch up with you on everything that I have read in the past few months, but it's actually going to be a two-parter. So look out on Wednesday for the second half of my catch-up, because seriously, no one needs too big a dose of me all at once. So my month off to finish my masters turned into more like 2, or is it maybe more? I don't know. But the uni work is done. It was not fun. And I think I was right to take a bit of a hiatus from Booktube, because as it was, I was skinning my teeth in it anyway. So any other commitments would definitely have seen me miss that deadline. But yeah, it's in. I've got no idea if it's any good, and I won't know my mark, and whether my 6 years of university have come to nothing more than a big yeah, but I won't know that until November at the earliest. But then it's taken me a couple of weeks to get back into the rhythm of life again. Probably not helped by the fact that I celebrated for basically the whole of September. I went away for a weekend for a friend's 40th birthday. Then my middle boy turned 9, so we had all the party shenanigans for that. I went away for another weekend with a couple of friends to go and see Blossoms play a gig in Manchester. And then to top it off, I went to a festival in Glasgow as well. But now, apart from never wanting to socialise again, at least until Christmas, now I'm starting to find a way to balance work and kids and the gym and reading and making booktubes again. So I'm trying to work up a schedule so I can get back on track. So let's give it a shot. So yeah, I thought I would catch up on what I did manage to read in the past couple of months. I actually managed to read 9 books, which I'm quite surprised about, because it certainly didn't feel like I was doing much reading. I was really only reading as a way to kind of decompress before bed at night. But 9 books in all the madness is something I'm quite happy with. So I thought I would start with the books that I read for the Booktube Prize, and then on Wednesday I'll talk about the other books that I managed to pick up. So yeah. Booktube finals. The winners have been announced both for the fiction and the non-fiction, so I will link the announcement video for that in the description box below. And for the finals, I was reading in the fiction category, and it was an amazing selection of books. Apart from one that I hadn't really heard of before, all of the other ones were books that I was planning on reading this year anyway. In fact, one of them I had already read. So I'm going to go through them in my ranking from 6th to 1st. But very much like the non-fiction semi-finals, this was really tough to call. Like, even as I'm revisiting the rankings that I gave, I'm like, funny, because like today that book would be 1st and that book would be 4th, and yeah, so clearly I don't have a clue what I'm doing when it comes to judging. I'm far too emotional about books. And in proper cheesiness style, they're all winners to me. But apparently on the 29th of September, when I submitted my rankings, this was the order that I put them in. So 6th place was The Prettiest Star by Curtis Sickels. And I don't actually think I had heard of this book before I had to read it and judge it. And all I gathered before going into it was that it was about a man returning from New York to his small Appalachian, neither of those sound right, his small American town, because he was dying of AIDS. And this is set in the 1980s in America, obviously, which was the height of the AIDS crisis. And it's a period of history that I'm really interested in. I read The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay last year. Really enjoyed that. And I've been really enjoying watching Pose on Netflix. And I want to get to It's a Sin, which is set in Britain, around the same time as well. And this is told through the eyes not just of Brian, who's the 24-year-old man, and he has seen his friends and his boyfriend die from the disease that's now claiming him, but it's also told through the eyes of his family to whom he returns. And his return is not met with much warmth, understanding, or compassion, which might not be surprising, given the time the book is set, but still it made me just so angry and disgusted at the reactions of not just the townspeople, but even Brian's own family. And I think what stuck with me is that, that this was the experience of so many young men, and they are, they were really young, a lot of them. Brian in this book is only 24. It's heartbreaking. And although living with AIDS is far different now, I don't doubt that for some gay men, this sort of prejudice continues, whether they have the disease or not. And, that side of it makes it a slightly tough read, but despite the subject, this book is actually surprisingly light, and that's probably why a lot of people like it. And it's impressive that Carter Sickels is able to balance the subject matter that way. But actually, for me, it was kind of what pulled it down in the rankings. It was just a little bit too light for me. And much in the way that I felt like the storyline of, I think that character is called Fiona in The Great Believers, her storyline kind of detracts from where I thought the real focus should have been and stayed. So I felt in this book, with some of the focus on Brian's teenage sister, but still, that isn't a huge criticism, because I actually really did enjoy this book. I just maybe didn't enjoy it as much as some of the other books that I read, but what do I know? It came in the bronze position in the final, so clearly a lot of people had a different opinion to me. Fifth place was The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I read this in conjunction with Nella Larson's passing, but I will talk about that in Wednesday's video when I get to my other books. So The Vanishing Half, do I need to introduce this, or has literally everyone read it by now? But just in case there's any other late to the partiers like me, this is about two black sisters, I think they're twins, Desiree and Stella, who grow up in a town where kind of through the generations people have become very light-skinned. The girls run away to the big city, because what small town character doesn't? And once there, Stella makes the decision to live as white passing, to live as a white woman, and she cuts her ties with her family, whilst Desiree marries a man of darker skin than hers, and she returns home with a dark-skinned child in tow, which is quite the scandal in that town. And this book is really an exploration of so many things: race and colorism, identity, racism, family ties, and identity and belonging. And I listened to it as an audiobook and felt that it was paced really well. I loved the character of Desiree, and I thought just overall the story was really strong. It had so much that I love in a book, which is funny because then I have to go and say that I didn't totally love it. And I think for me, this was a case of hype tainting my experience. This isn't the only book that this happened with in these finals, but considering there was a moment where I felt like everyone was raving about this book, I think probably towards the end of last year. So I think I had expected something earth-shattering, but instead it was just really good. But again, just not as good as the others. And this time people must have had the same sort of opinion, as it didn't make it into the winners circle. For my fourth place, I went with Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, although today, now the dust has settled, this one in particular, I would definitely be switching my fourth and third around. And this was possibly, even more than The Vanishing Half, probably the most talked about book on the list. And I had never read any of Maggie O'Farrell's books before, but I was keen to. I've got some on this trolley, and I was keen to. But then this book came out, and the proposition of a book about Shakespeare made me kind of do this. But the more people talked about it, and that it dealt with grief, and I really love me some grief in a novel because I am like a fun time party girl. I did swing back around to it, and this book isn't just about grief. There's lots of family dynamics, which again I really love, and I was totally mesmerised by the character of Agnes. This was another one I listened to on audiobook, which was it was like a meditative experience. Maybe that was just down to the narrator's voice, but I'm fairly sure it was actually because of the like near flawless prose. It's beautiful, but it's not flowery. It's unshrinking about certain things, but it's not graphic. And it's calm, but it still has like a lot of emotion. I thought this was a really powerful book, and I feel like a dick for putting it in fourth place now, but not to worry. Maggie still went and won the whole damn thing. So again, what does my opinion count? And so then on to my third place book at the time, was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is about a woman who has to re-examine the relationship she had with her teacher when she 14 when it starts, or 15? I think she might be 14. And kind of examine it to see, maybe it wasn't quite the equally powered, non-predatory and totally ungross relationship that she's always led herself to believe. And this comes after accusations from other former pupils are made against him. And this is kind of like, I guess it's Lolita told from Lolita's perspective, but with a hefty dose of Me Too realism. It's a really confronting book, and it felt very true to how something like this could play out. It's ick vibes woven between some really keen observations, or maybe it's some keen observations woven between ick. I can't decide if it was heavier on the ick or the observations, but it's an unsettling blend, which is maybe why this book also didn't get a winning spot. I think it will be a difficult read for a lot of people, but it worked for me. So on to my second place, and don't kill me and or my fellow country folk, but I would put Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart into second place. God, I was looking forward to this. And again, I think this might have been a victim of hype, or just really my own expectations of this book. Not to say it wasn't bloody near perfect, because it really was. Just, it just didn't quite snatch first place for me. So, despite the fact it's called Shuggie Bain, this is really the story of Agnes Bain, who is a single mother in 1980s Glasgow, and how her mistreatment by men and her struggle with alcohol impacts her and her kids, mainly wee Shuggie of the title. Shuggie has struggles of his own, with an absent father, a sexuality that really wasn't embraced in that time or in the community in which the story is set, and an absolutely heartbreaking, undying love for his mother. And this is a bleak book, from the schemes and the mining town where a lot of it is set, to the seemingly endless downward spiral of Agnes, the unhappiness of Shuggie, and the backdrop of Thatcherite decimated Glasgow and the surrounding towns. But at the same time, There's humour and glimmers of light which shine through, and it really moved me through so many different emotions. And actually, despite its kind of booker status, it's really readable. So like I said, it's a near perfect book, and as it came in second place overall as well, I think a lot of other people agreed. So fabulous. So that means that others didn't agree with me on my first place choice, because this one didn't even get a step on the podium at all, which just proves that people are wrong. But my first place book is one I read earlier in the year and loved it so much, and felt that it was strong enough to hold up against all these more recent reads. And that book is The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwaeke Emezi. I'll link to my fuller review of this book in the description box below, but this is the story of how a young man, Vivek, comes to be found dead on his family's porch. And it's a death that's tragic not only for Vivek, who is a wonderful and fascinating person who we come to know and, at least for me, love throughout the story, but also the people around him. And it's a really powerful story about how prejudice and the denial of someone's sexuality or gender or their self-identity can really shackle a person. It's fabulous storytelling, and it's an important message. It's just flawless, and like I said, people are just plain wrong. And just like that, I'm back in the saddle. It does feel really good to talk books again. Did you take part in any of the rounds of the Booktube judging this year? How did you get on? And what do you think of the final results? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd also love to hear if you're going to get involved next year as well. But let's wrap this up now, and I will be back on Wednesday to talk about the other books I read in my Booktube absence. And so until then, bye! Remember